I'll be honest, I can't believe it makes me furious the way that our rivers are treated. As someone who grew up on the banks of the Kennet,
this is a no-brainer issue for most of the public as well. I don't understand how we are where we are with
that's
this.
The big difference is, if you imagine 18 months, even 12 months ago, this issue hadn't even been discussed. That the general public were not aware that people were, let's be honest, dumping shit in rivers and doing nothing about it and taking huge profits. So we've banged the drum for long before I was there over this issue, and all of a sudden it started to resonate. The Panorama programme made a big difference, and then all of a sudden you run these campaigns with a more consumer focused group like Surfers Against Sewage, where you get individuals to write to their MPs, and Anglers did a brilliant job with this, by the way, saying I want you to support the Wellington
we're not renowned
Amendment.
for voting, you know, in that sense.
We're not brilliant. No, we're not brilliant at it, and we don't. If you imagine, actually there aren't many individual groups that can boast the numbers that we can on particular issues, but fish are a dividend of the environment they live in. And if it's a clean environment, those fish will grow. Those carp that we've been looking at, we wouldn't have those to fish for if we didn't have those clean, healthy environments. And we know how devastating different impacts can be on that. So for us, we control the things we can control. The work around sewage, actually, you ask about demoralising. I don't want this to be a political answer, but I'm amazed that we've actually got it that high up the agenda so quickly in my tenure, because I looked at it as it was almost brushed under the carpet.
Do you think that the direction of travel is right then? In fact, that this is a temporary setback and it will be changed in the long run?
I think there'll be more pressure on it than there's ever been. I think if you look back, I think there's going to be a point of reflection in a couple of years' time where the general public and politicians look back and say, I can't believe we let them get away with that.
No, I mean...
And I'm not saying it's going to be fixed. I think there will be more pressure. The route that we've taken is around, because it's fine to jump up and down and wave a placard and whatever else, but you've got to give people a solution of how can you make this better. The big focus we've had in our broken water system report is on Ofwat. So as the regulator, they can make it a requirement on water companies to consider their sustainability, but also their environmental footprint. And so actually from the policy statement that they make annually, that's the route to really drive regulation. It's not to slag off the regulator, because we'd like the regulator to do more as well. But if you actually set it in policy from the government down, the water companies don't have a choice. One of the big issues that's tough, and it's really difficult to talk about at a time when inflation's run as it is, fuel's as expensive it is, water's been too cheap for too long and the infrastructure hasn't kept up. And so there's an element that it needs investment.
Yeah, I mean, what other business would be allowed to dump a toxic waste product unregulated, largely?
No one. And the volumes it is. One of our reports was, you're talking about 400,000 tonnes of the stuff, and that's in the Y alone. But where we've got to be careful, and that's a really good example of it, is the main fury has been around water companies. If you actually look at pollution, there's more pollution from agriculture than there is from water companies. And that's why Fish Legal are so key, is the fact that with that fighting fund, it operates in perpetuity. So if you're a club, you'll always be protected. And what we're starting to see now, Rich, with Fish Legal, is people leaving us legacies in their will and saying, I've fished a really good life. I've loved my fishing, but I'm really worried there'll be no rivers or lakes to fish for my grandchildren. So you guys do something about it. I want to leave you this. And we hold that so we can invest in doing more with that work. But what we do is make sure that no club will ever be red taped out of it or priced out of it by a water company, so that we can always hold them to account.
Sorry, Rich, to jump in. I just want to bring that back and correct me if I'm wrong. So are you telling me like water companies, whatever, whoever they may be, are dumping 400 tonnes of sewage in rivers all up and down the country?
Much more.
They're allowed to, but they're allowed to by law. So especially in times of high flow, they're granted the permission to just dump, but they do it all the time, allegedly. Because there's no one to see it. There's no one to monitor that. That's
what baffles me. Is why is that not?
Because there's not enough people.
Yeah, but nobody's
to do it.
But the problem is
But nobody's speaking. I mean, I know that you guys are obviously doing a certain amount of work, but your general day-to-day, to me, that's why I wanted to bring it back, because that's shocking.
It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing where I'm in Oxford, mate, because people like to swim in the river there.
Yeah, I see. You see it everywhere.
There's only one spot in the entire river system in Oxford, which includes several streams and branches of the Thames and the River Cherwell. There's only one spot that meets bathing water requirements because of the level of sewage that's in the river.
That quote alone is horrific when you think about where we live in the world. Do you know what I mean?
These are our natural resources. These are our children's natural resources.
But that's shocking information to people that aren't anglers. You know, I could pick you many people that would be totally shocking to, and I can't believe that. Is it a case of, don't tell me if I'm going down the conspiracy route, but is it a case of that it's being shut down and it's purposely, I don't know, if the water company's not putting it out there, or? Well,
they're not. I mean, they've got statutory obligations. So in 2015, way before I started, Fish Legal won this landmark case.
Yeah.
And this sounds really boring, but there's a reason to this, that water companies would be subject to EIR requirements, which is environmental, basically reporting. So they were saying that energy companies it applied to, but not to them as water companies.
Yeah.
Fish Legal won and said, no, you are subject to that. So all of this campaigning or these freedom information requests are because the tiny little organisation of Fish Legal took on the water companies collectively and said, you have to publish this.
Wow.
This is your obligation.
Yeah.
So now all the stuff that you see Surfers Against Sewage doing and whatever else, where the water companies have to report. So like Rich touching on the fact of 365 days, you've got sites where 280 of them, there's untreated sewage being discharged, which is way above their permitting.
So how do they get away with that then?
Well, there isn't the level of enforcement to deter it.
So essentially, it's just breaking it down like as
no,
a
it's good
if you like. But essentially, that's like I got away with stealing a Ferrari out the garage because police didn't see me do it.
Yeah, kind of. But you've also got the element of it's who you steal it from. So
right, okay.
If you fine Southern Water £1 billion,
yeah,
they put their prices up. So the only people that you actually damage are the customers.
That sounds criminal, really, doesn't it?
And this level of environmental terrorism effectively is what it is. It's certainly vandalism. And it's why we've got to have that bigger voice around these issues and why actually amplifying it. And you came actually back to the trade earlier, Rich. What if we can get elements like this that spread far and wide? We don't have that single voice that gets us out everywhere. We need anglers to take individual action at a grassroots level in the same way other environmentalists do, to say this is unacceptable. If you go on to social media, if you go onto Instagram or whatever else, Toby, and I've seen some of your fish on Instagram, so but you'll see people like Fergal Sharkey, you'll see Jim Murphy, you'll see Marina Gibson, you'll see Damon Valentine, you'll be able to follow Fish Legal. You see this is daily. This isn't like one, but it's not on the front pages daily because they make the headlines. As Rich says, you get the Wellington Amendment to the Environment Act or bill, you get an argument in Parliament over whether water companies should have to do this, that or the other, and then it goes away to committee. So we're working with the committee being led by Philip Dunn behind the scenes to try and ensure that this can't take place in the future. There's tighter regulation, there's more investment, but it's a difficult challenge. It's
I can imagine.
It's a difficult argument to make, and you're talking about hugely resourced organisations with bigger legal teams than we've got staff teams.
Yeah, there'd be billion pound organisations. Yeah, like you said, it's an unforgiving battle probably.
But anglers are at the coalface because we're probably more directly impacted than any other consumer group because we cannot do what we do without clean water and healthy environments.
No. And Rich, coming back to what you said, and please forgive me if you have explained this, but you said they get away by doing it because essentially it's legal.
It is legal, yeah. That they're allowed to discharge a certain amount. I think, Jamie, is that right? But
at certain flow levels.
Chiefly when it gets extremely wet and there's high flows in the river. Then they're allowed to open the floodgates and let this stuff out. But there's nothing to say they can't do it all the time because no one's watching.
So nobody's enforcing it.
No, because once again, the EA doesn't have the money to go out and monitor all these sites.
So bearing in mind with slander and libel and everything like that. But there's nothing, like you said, there's nothing to say that come 5 o'clock at the end of the day, oh mate, he's not left the doors open. It's been going hypothetically.
That's the kind of thing.
Yeah. But Toby, if it's helpful for you, the reason we launched the Anglers Against Pollution campaign earlier this year was to try and give anglers a route to how they can make a difference. That it wasn't just saying to, like, the outrage that you've shown, and I smiled back at you when you were that angry about it. You can see
a bit of just shocked.
For me, it was the really simple thing that anglers can do if they're that angry is join the Angling Trust and support us trying to make a difference.
Yeah.
But for everyone, they're going to say, well, actually, you do loads of different stuff, and I don't want the money to go here, there, or everywhere. That's what really worries me. So we launched Anglers Against Pollution here. So it's a ring fence fund. So if you're really upset around the pollution element, you can focus into that area. You can sign up so that you get updates on petitions you can sign. You get focus on what we're doing and education on what we're doing.
Focusing it all in for someone to make it easy for someone to get involved in a certain campaign is a good thing.